Hey everybody, how are ya? Hope you're doing okay out there. Really glad you're listening right now because this episode's guest has a pretty amazing story that I don't think you're going to want to miss. It goes right to the heart of a really important question, which is, how do you solve a problem that nobody wants to talk about? To answer that question and to talk about that very problem, we speak with Lance Rubin, founder of financial modeling consultancy Model Citizn. In this episode, he gives a detailed breakdown of what it's like to experience a cyber attack, from what they did to solve it, the consequences, and the most surprising thing he learned from the incident. Have a listen. So pleased to have you.
Thanks, Shanna, and thanks for the opportunity. It's a topic that a lot of people are scared about, and it's great to be able to share some of my learnings and hopefully, allow people to protect themselves going forward.
Amazing. So before we get into that, do you mind just sharing, a bit about your background and how you came to found Model Citizn?
Sure. I spent 20 years in corporate across accounting firms, investment banking, corporate finance. Always loved numbers. Excel was my tool of choice, as it still is today. Nothing much has changed. But, I sort of started to get closer to business and realized that actually the exciting part of numbers is the business side of numbers, not the backward looking. It's more the forward looking things. And how do you influence decision makers and how do you make better decisions as a business? And it wasn't until I started doing investment banking and corporate finance and mergers and acquisitions and building really complex models to fund toll roads and education and all sorts of building and property and hospitality and the list goes on. And I think that the beautiful thing I loved about financial modeling is that it had the creative side whilst not risking yourself going into jail. Because if you say to an accountant, I'm going to be creative with numbers, you get into trouble. If you're an investment bank and you're creative with numbers, to a certain degree, of course, you can make some really informed decisions and help people. So I left the corporate world, being in accounting and finance roles and CFO roles and divisional heads of finance roles. And I created Model Citizn because I wanted people to learn the skill of financial modeling, because I could see that it could be very useful for business owners, and therefore business owners could be my clients, but also finance professionals. So I've become a financial trainer and I train accountants and finance people to build financial models to make better decisions. And now we've gone into data analytics and we've gone all over the place because everything comes back to data. But Model Citizn for me is to help people make relevant, informed, and purposeful decisions with insight. So it's agnostic of what it is, it's all about the decision. And decisions are difficult and they're complex and they're not so easy. So I love what I do and we've got a team and we're just tackling all these business problems, which are, there's never a dull moment in business.
Amazing. And so it sounds like, you really love numbers. And so this is all about helping other people understand and use those to make better decisions. Is that right?
Yeah, spot on. Yeah 100%.
And so when we talk about Model Citizn, this is not exactly a nation state with lots of foreign intelligence and military secrets, but it sounds like you were taking security pretty seriously anyway. Can you share what sort of steps you had already taken to defend against, cyber crime, scams, et cetera? Like what was in place?
Yeah, I guess when I started, I was a bit naive to the world saying, oh, well, it's just a little business, who's ever going to look at us? We're fine. But then as we started to grow and started to have bigger clients, including some governments as clients, including some large listed organizations, I started to realize, well, it's just not good enough. I've got to put in a policy. I've got to have cyber insurance. So one of the first things I did was actually look at acquiring cyber insurance when it was still reasonable. I think depending on when you took out insurance, the attacks on small business were certainly nowhere near what they are today. But, you heard of the bigger cybersecurity hacks and all the rest. And so I think those steps I took in place, we were on the Microsoft suite. So we had a basic level of protection through Microsoft. What I also did was I turned on 2FA, two-factor authentication, and outsourced IT, and we still got attacked.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
So what can you tell us a little bit about that attack? What sort of attack are we talking about?
Yeah, it was what I'd call, and I mean, I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but I certainly learned a truckload through this. So we call it an advanced phishing attack, really. So effectively, they went on a phishing expedition to try and extract our clients' information and get our clients to click links to then disclose their information so that they could get access to them. So it wasn't that, we're not a very large organization. We don't have millions of dollars in reserves. We don't have access to people's systems. Yes, we've got access to cloud accounting packages like Xero, but nothing that we control within our environment is, apart from financial information, which I know is sensitive, but it's not life-threatening sensitive. It's not like we don't have customer data. We don't have ID information. We don't have personal identification information. All of that stuff that is, I guess, what people typically attack. If you think of health records and all the ones that have been happening lately, and banking records, we don't have that. So what they're trying to get to is our customers, who are very large organizations, through us and orchestrate looking like us. So effectively what happened was they took control of a service account. Now, we had a service account. So, just a standard, info at Model Citizn was the service account. And when I first started my business, that service account was my virtual assistant. And in order for us to move and do changes, I gave her admin rights in my environment. And then she left, and then someone else replaced. And we never changed the rights of that service account. And that service account is what got compromised. And so for me, it was a big learning around, if you do have a service account, the last thing you should be giving it is admin rights. Every single time you have an administrator, it's an individual person. And you need to be careful of that. So we enforced 2FA. So we had 2FA, but it wasn't enforced. And then even when you enforce it, if the account existed pre you enabling enforcement, you still can get around it. So the service account was created before the 2FA was enforced. So therefore, because it already existed and, we could see multiple attempts, I got really deep into some of the logs through our IT services company. They helped us. They were awesome. They were phenomenal. In fact, getting on top of it straight away, actually helping me understand, because I didn't believe it. I'm like, what do you mean we got hacked? I don't believe it. Where? How? What? How did they even do it? And we basically walked through all the steps that had happened. So compromised a service account, had admin rights, then put rules in our Microsoft Exchange, which meant that all my emails were starting to go elsewhere and was controlled. They put in control emails at forwarding, so they were then interacting on my behalf without me knowing. So that was quite scary. And then effectively, I got no emails for the day. So all my emails went to deleted. And I thought, gee, I'm pretty busy anyway. I've got meetings and, like everyone, you go back at the end of the day, you just see these reams of emails. Well, I was between meetings, but I didn't get these ream of emails. I'm like, oh, that's actually a good day. Something happened. And then suddenly I get this message like, you've been hacked. I'm like, no, that can't be. And so I guess, people who knew me and knew what we did straight away saw that something wasn't quite right, and sent me some screenshots. I got about 2 or 3 people notified me through WhatsApp, through SMS messaging. Didn't obviously send me emails to say that, you've been hacked, but clearly knew that I was compromised. And, that was, not a great 24 to 48 hours, I have to say, as a business owner, and thinking, why me? Like, why did I deserve this? Or why did they target me? And it was because of our clients and because of who we dealt with that we were a target.
And can I ask the time period? You said that this spanned about 24 to 48 hours. I'm wondering, what was the, that kind of eerie silence of, you're kind of grateful that you're not getting tons of emails, but it's also a bit odd. What did that look like? Roughly how long were they controlling your account for?
A few hours. So I guess by the time that I recognized it, I got straight onto our IT services company, and he responded straight away. Got on a call. We completely reset everyone's login details. We went through logs, and so it was only for a few hours that it was exposed. But I say the reason it says 24 to 48 hours because you don't actually know the damage that's caused until a lot later. And then of course we reported the incident to our insurance company. They then put us in touch with forensics. One of our clients was a subsidiary of a major bank. So we started getting questions there. So there was, I guess that's the flow-on impact. Whilst the exposure period was quite short, it was the sort of ripple effects of what that meant. I got onto social media almost instantly when I took a screenshot, put onto LinkedIn, and I just said, look, if you get this email from me, do not click the link. It's not me. It was a really, weird link saying, here is our receipt for your amount that you've paid to us if you want to download it here. So it went to everyone. So like, why would, it was like not related to, in some cases, they weren't even clients. It just went to my database. But of course they were just hitting up everyone. So yeah, it was called sort of post that period of 48 hours that I then sort of got a better understanding of. And also we knew that there was no more gremlins running around our systems.
So sorry to make you go back, but just to rewind slightly, who was the first person to kind of say, hey, I think you've been compromised? Was that your IT partner, or was that a coworker or a client?
Neither. It was Cameron Lynch from Etani. He's a business owner like me. He runs a Power BI. He has a great product. He was the first. He sent me an SMS with a screenshot of that. And there's a few other people in the accounting industry that I know quite well. So it was great to see that, one, people are aware of this and got on the front foot, but incredibly powerful in terms of the community. And I think that's the one thing that is important is, and I felt I had an obligation back to that community to say, hey, we have been compromised. I've now been notified that I've been compromised. Do not click any links. And if you have, reset your password straight away.
Yeah. Yeah, that openness seems like it was pretty crucial in dealing with. That's probably one reason why this didn't last as long as it could have, is that you had
much damage because, thankfully post the full forensic investigation and everything else, they did a full report, which we didn't pay for, was covered by insurance. That report actually went back up to the bank as well. So they had their IT experts and cybersecurity experts review it, and we got away with, fortunately, no losses, but a really good learning lesson out of it. And we, as a result, invested and upgraded our entire system as well. So we went on to a higher Microsoft license, which to premium, which allowed us far more information and logs and tracking and email filtering and significant. I mean, it was definitely an eye-opener for us in terms of what we could have been on, but at the same time, it's thankfully not catastrophic.
Yeah, and it's so scary to hear how that vulnerability was almost kind of grandfathered in based on,
Correct.
the 2FA.
It was exactly grandfathered in, 100%.
Yeah. And so I'm wondering, when it comes to the timelines, for instance, how long did it take to get the forensic report? What was that process like?
That was quite a lot longer because I guess, firstly, our vendor and sort of service organization, and they helped us a lot as well in terms of we were on Google, I have to say, and then we moved off Google for partly those reasons because we didn't feel like we had enough security on our data through Google. You're in the Google stack, nice and easy when you sign up and you start, but you literally give your data over to Google. So that's one thing that I was quite shocked when I first found, and I thought, well, I really can't continue down. That's why large organizations, to the most part, are on Microsoft stack because of its security. So we went on that journey, but still had Microsoft, had cyber insurance, and we still got attacked.
Right. Yeah. You can't behave as if you've just been compromised every single minute of the workday, because then you would never get anything done.
No, correct.
It sounds like because, you had the foresight to invest in, for instance, a cyber policy, as well as, the quick action on your part, as well as a lot of your partners and the people that you interact with. So it could have been much worse. But at the same time, when we hear something like, you went through a forensic process for 3 months, even knowing that it was paid for by your insurance provider, that sounds quite shocking. Did you feel like you felt, operational kind of disruptions? Did you feel like, especially with your clients, like you said, who do have that sensitive information?
It was a worrying period. It was like, well, what's going to come out of it? And so, I mean, it's one thing to be open and honest about, yes, we have a problem, and yes, this has happened, but it's a whole other thing to get an expert to go in and tell you what the real problem is. And I mean, we thought we knew what the problem is, but, the report was great, came back. It absolutely gave a glowing result to to our technology partner, service provider, which was fantastic. Again, they had done they basically said that everything that they did, they would have recommended to do, and they followed it to the letter. So that was really cool. So, yes, through the process, there was a bit of worrying, but at the back, I still wouldn't look back and say, no, I wouldn't want to. Obviously, I'd like to know that and probably put all those things before getting attacked. But it was an event that actually helped us a lot in terms of getting a lot more serious, even though we're a small business, actually treating this as really, really important, because it's your brand. It's no longer okay, well, they got access to data, or the data's left, or they're going to ransomware, for example. That was kind of the first thing that you get hacked, you think ransom, right? That's the first place you go, and you don't think about those subsequent ripple effects and the ramifications of that to your brand, to your clients, to other people, to your staff even. All my staff had to log out of their devices, and then they had to start, getting worried and help and scurry around and scramble, and so that got disrupted as well on the day. They had to stop working. They had to re-log into everything. They had to reset all their passwords. So everyone's password got reset in the entire organization. It's not that many people, there's 6, but anyway.
But still.
It sounds better when I say that.
Still.
Everyone's password got reset. So like, you think about how many applications you're logging into with a password, and your main password, in our case, which was the Microsoft login, and of course all the authentication apps, to reset and everything else. So yeah, it was very disruptive, but equally looking back, it's we were lucky to get away with, just the investment cost that we needed to spend. There wasn't any other financial losses.
When you're a small business, though, there's so many different things that you have to invest in, that you have to worry about. The idea of doing a full security audit and kind of doing that sort of thing up front is like, there's 1,000,001 other things that you have to do as a small business. So yeah. I think it's good for people to know that it is the sort of thing that you actually can't put it on the back burner, because at any point there could be a vulnerability that you're not aware of.
Absolutely. I'd say it's probably not a high enough priority for small businesses. I think it should be much higher as a priority. And I think as a business owner, I thought, well, I'm signing up to Google. I'm in the G Suite. I'm signing up to Microsoft. I'm in the Microsoft stack. Come on, that's secure. Surely these are multi-million-dollar companies, and I'm using their environment. Why wouldn't it be?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's in the detailed T's and C's, right? It's in the fine print. It's everything else, particularly with Google. Yeah. And in terms of what their true obligations are. And even Microsoft said, like, we're under no legal obligation to protect you. Like you have to control your own environment, because if I decide to turn off TFA in my whole environment, or if I decide not to have a virus scan, or if I decide to do whatever I want, or put post-it notes on LinkedIn about my passwords that I use everywhere else, whose fault is that? Well, it's mine as a business owner. So it's sort of, in those ways you say, well, did I do enough? And I think that's probably the element of, we probably could have done a bit more. But to your point, it's like, return on investment,
And, out of all of, this entire experience, you've described it as a really good learning experience. I'm wondering, like, when you were learning all this stuff, what was the most surprising thing that you took away from the entire experience? Did it, change many of your former beliefs or perceptions about cyber risks in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say probably the biggest takeaway was how advanced they are and how sophisticated they are and how much they will target even a small business. So one of the big things I didn't appreciate was it's not you as a business in your own in your own sort of right as an entity. It's actually how you're connected to the broader industry, finance ecosystem. And given that we're finance, we're trusted people. And so I think I'd say that probably anyone who's in financial services and a small business is probably at a greater risk, because we're so trusted, because we've got access to our clients' information, and therefore it's not necessarily our own data, it's our clients' data. So I think the level of sophistication, how they could reply on my behalf, and I didn't know about it. They took full control of my inbox because someone said it, but I just got an email back from me. I'm like, no, that's not me. So that level of sophistication was pretty scary. That they'd deploy a full-time person sitting at a screen, literally writing. It was probably two people. It was doing mine, or maybe it could have been one. I don't know. Both mine and my accountant's email credentials effectively were compromised. So yeah, it sort of didn't think that I was going to be at risk, and that was the real big takeaway. And then also just the sophistication, and I consider myself reasonably tech savvy, understanding terminology and understanding things, but the world is moving so fast with this stuff, and it's I guess when I took out cyber insurance, what is it, 4 years ago, I was like, I'm hoping this is not going to be another one of the insurance policies that are just going to sit there and, not actually rescue me one day. And then today, that day came, and then it's like, well, is the insurance policy actually worth it? So or is it just premiums? What wiggle clause are they going to hit me with now that I'm not going to be covered? So it was actually good to, from that perspective, saying, actually, no, this insurance policy is actually valuable. It's actually got value. Whereas I think many other people see insurance as, well, they never want to pay out. So, why get in the first place? And I might as well just take the premiums and invest it and self-insure. That's a really bad decision for cyber, because the damage can literally sink your organization. So I think that's one thing that in coming through that process, and made me say, well, actually, that was money well spent in terms of cyber insurance. Of course, you need to read your T's and C's and make sure that you're going with a good provider or a good broker. But I think that was another insight to say that this was actually something that I did from the start correctly.
Yeah, and it sounds like you were smart about it, and were kind of scrutinizing, the policy and everything, because, there are lots of instances where sometimes people assume that their organization is covered, or a certain type of incident is covered by their cyber insurance, and then something happens and it turns out, either their security standards weren't good enough, or it's not the type of incident that they'll cover. So there can be lots of problems there, but at the same time, as you've experienced, sometimes it really comes through, and without it, it could have been so much more catastrophic.
Yeah. I was surprised that the insurance company would cover the full investigation cost. And then I was speaking to someone and they said, actually not, because it's managing their risk.
Right.
And in fact, if they did find something, expect your premiums to go up. So don't worry, they'll be collecting back on you. So both of those were kind of a good tick for us. One, our insurance premiums didn't go up. In fact, I probably should have argued they should go down now because we've had our incident a little more secure, but you'll never get that from an insurance company. So firstly, we are more secure, and I guess there's a lot of comfort in terms of what we were doing. That was actually another key insight and takeaway.
Yeah, brilliant. And, like you said, I think a lot of times organizations feel like, why would we be targeted? But what we see all the time at F-Shore is that often, it's not the target organization who's being infiltrated. It's usually a supplier or a vendor who is trusted, and they often, maybe they don't have as many resources, they don't have a dedicated security team, and then those little vulnerabilities are much easier to pick up, and then they're the ones, that's often how scammers and attackers find their way in is through these, trusted contacts outside of their kind of maybe main target.
Exactly.
And so, we've talked about how, you touched on how finance leaders in particular tend to be, really trusted. We all kind of see them as, these are the numbers people, they're kind of these trusted confidants. Do you have any advice for finance leaders, or maybe, business owners in general? What would you want them to know about this experience that you had, and what would you want them to take away?
I think the main thing is just ask the question. Have we read the T's and C's of our cyber insurance, and have we matched that to our vulnerabilities, and is our policy up to date, and what sort of regular checking are we doing around our logs, our system logs? What is our stance internally? do our staff know that this is a performance gateway? So if they compromise or they share their password or they don't, or they try and circumvent anything, that is a performance issue, and they will not get a bonus and potentially even get fired. So I think there's an education piece around internally. Awareness is critical. So I think we get insurance policies, kind of like anything, and you just assume that the company's got insurance and you never talk about it. You're not walking around talking about directors and officers insurance or fire or theft or like it's not. This is one insurance policy you do want to be talking about. And not only the insurance policy per se, but just the risk that it's trying to cover. So did we do enough training? Did we do enough communication around that and explaining the importance of that? Are we running, phishing attacks and trials to see, or are our people, because I guess the first time I experienced this was when I left, I worked for a major bank in Australia, and I left the bank and I joined a fintech startup as their CFO. This was roughly around the time that I started Model Citizn. And I was sitting next to the CEO. And one of the things that I try not to do, and I think it's an important thing, in small organizations, you can't always get that, is I don't want to touch cash. I don't want to have access to bank accounts. I don't want to see cash. My own business, yes, of course, but my clients' businesses, I just, generally I want to stay away from cash, segregation of duties. Not because I don't trust myself or anything. I just think when you do that, you inherit more risk, right? If you get compromised, they then get access to a bank account. So I was sitting next to the CEO, and he sent me an email saying, "Hey, can you quickly pay this invoice?" And I look at him and I said, "Did you just send me an email?" And it's got his name on it. Now, back then, I didn't know to click on the name to look at the proper email address. That was the first time I'd seen that. I'm like, hang on. And then before I went over to the CTO, and he's like, "Oh, no, this is what you've got to do now." So now, and we're talking about 6 years ago that first happened. So back then I was even aware, coming out of a large organization into the, want of a better word, wild west of small business, because it is, right? In the small business land, in startups, it is a bit more rough around the edges, and you're kind of just trying to get stuff done and sort of grow a company. But you don't think of these things, not because you're negligent, but just because, as you said, there's so many other things to think about running a company and starting and growing all of that. It's not something that's front of mind. So back then, I sort of saw that there was that risk. So it's just evolved. It's just got more and more sophisticated.
Yeah, and it sounds like security is one of those things that, unfortunately for small business owners and founders, there's so many urgent existential things that they have to be worrying about. And now it sounds like security is definitely one of those. This has been both an unnerving conversation, but also I think quite optimistic in a lot of ways because, as you've explained, there's so many different practical things that leaders can be thinking about and doing in order to, first of all, make sure that they're mitigating the potential damage as you did, as well as preempting future damage. It sounds like there's some really practical things that people can be doing.
Yeah, I don't think you should be ashamed anymore, Shan. I think that's really important. I think everyone's at risk. Large organizations, governments, they're just as risk as a small business. And I think that's if there's one key thing for people to take away is don't think that you're immune from a cyber attack by the nature of your organization, whether it be size or otherwise. I think it's important to recognize that we're all at risk.
Exactly.
Both personally and in a professional sense as well.
Definitely. We saw that, we see security firms like FireEye, sometimes they're infiltrated, and it kind of feels a little bit like COVID, for instance, where you're probably going to get it. Something's probably going to happen. So it's more about what have you done to, guess, minimize the damage and then protect other people. Yeah. So that's really helpful. And thank you so much for, being so open and transparent about this. These are the stories and experiences that I think people need to hear in order to know how to deal with things themselves and what they should be doing.
My pleasure. And if I can help another business owner avoid the sort of 48 hours of, I definitely aged that day. And the next day I was just I just felt drained. I felt, you have busy days where you sort of on back-to-back meetings or you have difficult client conversations or you have difficult employee conversations. those pale in comparison to being attacked. It literally is. It's if I, you don't stand at the edge of a cliff and think, is this the moment? Then when that happens, and that's kind of what hit me the most. And I kind of at the end of that day, or the end, it's certainly 48 hours post, my stress levels eventually came down, but it was just like, I was like, but why me? Why? Like, I just kept on going, like, could not reconcile in my head. Oh, yes, we were doing stuff, but it was like, why? Like, just, I couldn't. And it's only when we got into the what they were trying to go after, which is my clients and not me specifically, that I put two and two together, and using that as a way to communicate them and take over me as a person. So someone was completely, pretending to be me, which is scary again, in terms of interactions with my clients and emails and, can you pay this, or can you click this, or I'm sorry, that didn't work. And I'd say the key thing is making sure you use multiple communication methods. That's also what saved me. SMS, WhatsApp, Slack, LinkedIn, phone call. I think don't get hooked into one mode of communication. So, when I was the CFO for that fintech startup Banjo, and I just turned over to the CEO and said, hey, did you just send me that email? I've never paid that invoice. Why are you sending me? He said, no, I didn't send it. So I think it's just stopping, pausing, and then using multiple methods to think, because we are all at risk. And I think if we think we're not, I think we're kidding ourselves.
And it sounds like, kind of like you said, it's about the layers, and it's about having, ways to kind of diversify and diffuse those risk factors across lots of different people, whether that's segregation of duties or lots of different channels. That sounds like a really important thing. Again, I'm sure it's tough when you're a small business owner and you've got a lot of different things going on, but that's really helpful advice to take away. All right, Lance. So if people wanted to find you or learn more about Model Citizn, where can they go?
Great, Jenna. They can go to LinkedIn firstly. I've actually got the financial modeling handle on LinkedIn, but you can just look up Lance Rubin, LinkedIn, and then Model Citizn, which is www.modelcitizn, CITIZN, no E in citizen.com. The fashion models took the Model Citizn URL address from me before I started, so I had to drop an E to make it work. And
so rude.
Z and all the rest, but so modelcitiznzn.com.
Thank you so much, Lance. This has been incredibly informative. I'm so glad to hear that your experience wasn't as bad as it could have been, even though it did cause, a bit of aging for you. But it sounds like you took
more gray hairs, yes.
Oh, it's worth it for the learning experience.
That's it.
All right. Thanks so much, Lance. Thanks again for listening to the latest episode of On the Defense. If you'd like to find out more about F-Shore, you can follow us on LinkedIn or head to www.fshore.com. Thanks again. Bye.